What was the net effect of the Niantic project? We had crossed a threshold in which global security could be at risk. Decrypting the data was the mistake.
This is not psychosis or some cognitive break, but an actual takeover of the mind.
Much of the public sculpture found in our cities is based on design seeded in the human mind.
Certain places have an energy that not only attracts people, but attracts events.
The mission of 13 Magnus is to monitor the effects of mind hacking. Obviously, this will be done with the highest of security, to make sure that the ideas do not contaminate or threaten humanity.
This all leads to Niantic.
I know that many tools will be needed to fight this battle.
You just have to know where to look and know what you're seeing.
Portals emit exotic matter into our world, and that matter has certain effects on our world.
I started noticing that there were energy fields, anomalies on Earth all around me.
A few of them exhibit properties that are as yet unexplained.
I know that there are others out there.
What if they're already among us, but we don't realize it?
And I must be prepared to work with them or fight them. They are coming. Something's wrong out there in the world. This doesn't feel like a scientific study.
The one hope lies in understanding what happened at Niantic.
Not all mysteries are solvable, but the joy comes in the pursuit.
But today we're here to talk about Ingress. I'm very pleased to be joined by two key members of Ingress creators, Niantic Labs. I've got Project VP John Hanke here and Creative Lead Flint Dille. Thanks very much for joining us, gents. Although we're talking about designing living fiction, designing the world of Ingress's narrative, I think first it's best if we touch on the Ingress story from, I guess, from a player's standpoint, first of all.
Yeah, as Martin mentioned, we kind of updated the DICE crew in Vegas last year about Ingress. It's a new kind of game. It's a mobile game. It's an MMO. It's played out in the real world. And it's a very kind of social experience. So it's been well received. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from folks. So yeah, I mean, people getting tattoos of the game logo, not temporary tattoos, but real body tattoos. Of course, the requisite proposal. People doing crazy things like chartering helicopters and airplanes to go out and play the game. That's actually a commercial pilot on the right side of the screen, although he's not actively flying the plane at the moment. He's playing Ingress. People take commercial flights to the far corners of the globe. They play on bikes. People write us and tell us that they're getting fit and losing weight. And people have done some really extreme things as well, including climbing mountains. The crew in the lower left there climbed that 9,300-foot peak in France to get to the top of the mountain. They just posted today, they just went back, like 20 people climbed this mountain to capture a portal at the top. So some people said people won't go outside to play games. That's wrong. Our players have proven that, and people are having a lot of fun with their phones playing games out in the real world. But
yeah, I guess when you were creating Ingress, the aim was to get people outdoors and exploring their local areas and looking at it in a different light, I suppose. But I guess the fitness side of it, the weight loss that people have experienced, that was a kind of an unexpected.
Kind of unexpected, yeah. We wanted to get people outside. The game is built around historical sites and cultural landmarks like art, a statue in the park, or a piece of architecture. So we wanted to help people see those kinds of interesting places in their town or community. But yeah, people seem to really like kind of moving around and meeting other people. And
that's it. And there's a very good reason that this game inspires such devotion, and that's really kind of pivotal. Is its evolving narrative, which really ties into the event's theme of Without Borders. This really is a story without borders. Flint, we've seen ARGs in the past that have helped to launch video games, something like Halo 2's I Love Bees campaign, for example. But those campaigns kind of end at the point of launch, and then everything beyond that is quite traditional. So why did you decide to kind of continue that throughout Ingress's life?
Well, I mean, what we knew, it's kind of interesting. We knew that, the Ingress is a game unlike any other game anybody's done, so we knew we're going to have to do a story that's not like any other story, and we're going to have to present it. And we wanted it to go on forever. It's something you tune into every day. And for us, our story is a game. It's like this giant puzzle that you get a little piece of it every day, or maybe a couple pieces, and you assemble it. And so that's, we figured, look, someday there are going to be thousands of GeoMobile games, but this is the first one, so we really wanted to go out to frankly, the furthest edge of storytelling, and that's, I think, what we've done.
Cool. And why did you decide to go this route? Why didn't you employ the kind of traditional video game conventions of cutscenes?
Well, I know, lots of people in this room have made mobile games, and you think about that challenge of how do you tell a compelling story? How do you deliver that to somebody on their mobile phone in a way that really draws them in? You don't have this great living room experience like you would with a console game where you can blow them away with a beautiful kind of cutscene sequence and the full sort of THX sounds. That's not really going to probably reach somebody in a real effective way on a 4-inch screen, particularly with a game like Ingress where they're outside, there's glare, they may or may not have headphones on. So the challenge was, and I sort of laid that in front of Flint, how do we draw people in? How do we create a rich world for a mobile game? And the idea of doing that through an ARG was the solution we came up with. Tell the story through social media and all these other forms that kind of surround the user, and then the mobile game fits in with that, but it's not the only delivery vehicle.
So talking to delivery vehicles, we've got examples of it here. Let's talk to the first one that you've employed, social.
Oh, yeah. Basically, what you're looking at here on the left-hand side, that's a heretofore undiscovered letter from Robert E. Howard to H.P. Lovecraft. And those guys fit into our story. Our story runs the gamut of time and history. Then we have secret intelligence agencies, because our whole thing is we're a big company, and so we have to say the Ingress is a game. Of course, what we suspect and what players suspect is it's really a secret intelligence agency duping people into harvesting exotic matter, which is the currency of the game. So there's an active attempt to suppress our own the truth of what Ingress is.
You mentioned, Flint, that the story is the game. So with these kind of storytelling elements that you release through social, how do you then kind of integrate that back into the game world, or how do you get the player to kind of interact with those elements?
Well, some of the elements, it can be 24/7. We've really got a really live social media community. Like fanatical followers, any of whom know the story better than I do, and then you're out in the real world, so you're trying to amplify the real world. That's the home run for us, because unlike living room experience, we got incredible pixel depth, and we have real weather effects out in the world, and lighting effects. So we don't have to worry about that. It's all having the game just get into you subcutaneously.
So this slide, embedded puzzles. Tell me about what's.
Oh yeah, the puzzles are great. Okay, we have a whole faction of our players. We have trackers who are people that follow the story. Hackers are people that walk around the real world. Crackers are our puzzlers, and they crack these elaborate codes. They're like these leagues of geniuses around the world that will hide stuff, or will put any backwards codes or letters, and they find them and crack them in real time, and then send the information to the people out in the world to solve problems. It's pretty cool. And if you look at the picture of Pangaea, did I pronounce that right? What that is that's a world before it broke into continents. But what it really is a coded map for where our big events are going to be in the upcoming months. And so these guys will spend, it's amazing how fast the crackers work, but the crackers are going to have to solve that to tell the trackers where the events are going to be. So it's pretty cool.
So John, with Ingress itself, a lot of it is obviously played via your phone, using GPS, finding locations, deploying resonators to capture these portals. But what methods have you employed to, I guess, get players together in a social capacity?
Yeah, one of the challenges of telling a story through this mechanism where it's disconnected from the actual gameplay experience on the phone itself is how do you connect things back together? How do you draw the player who's solving online in contact with somebody who's playing out in the real world? So we did that mechanically through code. So if you solve a puzzle, you can get a code which you can redeem in the mobile client and get items and loot that helps you play the game. You may also get information that helps you in one of the real world events that we have. So you may find out in advance of the other team where it's going to happen, or where some of the super valuable spots are in one of the upcoming events. Like you would solve a puzzle and get that information.
And then we have fictional characters show up at the real events too. That's the other thing that happens.
Yeah.
So these pictures here, these are actual Ingress gatherings.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they've gotten bigger and bigger. We started with having a few dozen people show up, and we found that it was working. People seemed to like meeting other people and playing the game together, as well as playing it, kind of on their own and separately. And yeah, they've gotten bigger and bigger. We'll have the finale of our current series this weekend. We'll have 1,000 people.
Yeah, who would have thought 1,000 people are going to show up in Prague and blue and green
over
shirts?
2,000 people in Munich. So yeah,
2,000 people in Munich. Wow. And so what's the upshot then? If these people get together, they engage in these events, how does that then impact back onto the narrative?
Oh, well, our narrative is very interactive. It's if the Enlightened win, we will have stakes for an event, and if the Enlightened win, then something good happens for them. If the Resistance wins, then the story takes another turn. So it's a little bit like a pick-a-path, except they don't know exactly what the consequences are. Like sometimes they aren't what they think they're going to be.
So you've got branching outcomes that you've considered for each event.
Yeah. I mean, basically, well, we had one that was really interesting. It started out in Texas, and we had a secret document that was found in Texas that fictionally had to be handed off in London, and it was a great event here in Greenwich. It's called Time Zero, and what happened was everything worked perfectly in the game. The Enlightened got the document, and we thought they were just going to trade it in. We had some fictitious corporations that may or may not exist. We're bidding for it. We're giving game elements away, but the players didn't want it. And so they decided they're going to blackmail us instead, right? The players decided to blackmail the game. And we went for it. They wanted the allegiance of a character named Clue. And so we had to put Clue at risk. And and we created an event that weekend in Portland. And if the Enlightened won, they control Clue. If the Resistance won, they control Clue. And the Enlightened won, so Clue shifted alignment. There are two teams, they're the Enlightened and Resistance. Enlightened is green, and they think that this invasion of exotic matter is a good thing and it's leading to a renaissance, and the Resistance are innately suspicious of this kind of stuff and think it's a hostile takeover of the human brain. And so Clue shifted alliance. And then there was another one. It's that's Time Zero, and right in the middle you can see where they blackmailed us. And then there was Operation Save Clue. But
they blackmailed us for game loot.
Yeah,
not for real money.
No, but they wanted the alignment of Clue. Remember they sent us that thing? They sent us a great video. It's like professional grade video, and the players make stuff for us.
So you've moved from these monthly events more recently into quarterly events, bigger events. What was the thinking behind kind of spreading them out more?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess first of all, the whole thing that led us to this was this whole issue of a timeline, because with a single player game experience, you control the timeline. So a player starts playing a game, they pop in the DVD, the story starts, they make some progress, the story progresses. With this, we decided from the beginning we wanted to have this shared world. So that meant the timeline for the fiction had to begin when the game began on our time frame. So that raised the question of, well, what determines what's going to happen with the fiction? Because it really needs to be based at that point collectively on everybody's kind of input. It's no longer a single player thing, and we didn't want people to be kind of at different points in the story. So we started experimenting with having the event and the outcome of the battle on that day in various cities around the world basically shape what would happen with the fiction. And those became bigger and more frequent to the point where they were probably too much for players to absorb, and certainly they became like too much for us to produce. That went from every now and then to monthly to more than once per month. And where we are now is we've basically settled on this idea of a season, which feels like a comfortable place to be for players and for us. So a season is 3 months. And now we name them, we brand that season. We've done 4 of those so far, so we've done a year's worth of these, starting with 13 Magnus, and then Recursion and Interitus, and the current one is Helios, which concludes this weekend. So it's 3 months of battling all around the world, and then at the end of that, there's a decision point, and something significant happens in the story.
So that's a large aspect of the social element. Recursion was one of your recent events. That kind of then feeds into one of your other methods of storytelling, which is video.
Sure.
Flynn, do you want to tell me a little about what the events of Recursion, what the upshot of that, who this Hank Johnson character is?
Yeah, Recursion was a whole story cycle, and this played out actually through a couple of story cycles, but Hank Johnson is a very popular sort of, I wouldn't call him Indiana Jones, but he is a guy who goes around the globe investigating things. You know, he has his own reality show, but he's also an investigator and is well aware of what's going on in Ingress world. And the whole point of our stories is, you know, our game is right here, right now. I mean, it's 21st century. This isn't a story that's canned, you know, ahead of time. It's like, you know, we have to figure it out as we go. We're like a live band. Hank is made out of exotic matter. He appears to be a real human being, but he's in fact a simulacrum. And he is enlightened. So the enlightened wanted to keep him alive, but they had to assemble all these different shards of his consciousness in order to do it. And and literally that means passing objects, almost like passing physical objects, but they're virtual, around the world. And the resistance is trying to stop him. And so here's Hank at this last moment, like happening contemporaneously with the event. And we're going to find out whether the enlightened or resistance is successful. So if Hank lives, when he steps into this glyph circle, he's alive, okay? If he dies in here, then, you know, well, you know, that didn't work out for the enlightened.
But
so here he is.
This is your way of announcing the results to the public as well, so the members of the enlightened resistance,
and this is how players all around the world find out what happened at the events. The glyphs are a secret language sent to us by a transdimensional intelligence. And here he is. Things are going pretty well for him so far, so Hank may make it. You don't know. You gotta see. Oops. I guess things didn't work out well for Hank. So, you know.
Bad stuff. So that's one way that you're using video, and that's very much within the world of Ingress. But you also have something called the Ingress Report, which is your weekly wrap-up. Now, this is kind of more a fusion of kind of celebrating the actions and achievements of players and then kind of tying that back into the narrative to kind of drive.
Yeah, I mean, it was designed with two things in mind. One is to make the players the stars. So like epic missions that players might go on. Susanna, who hosts it, will feature that. She'll talk about them. She'll show their picture, call out their code name. But it's also designed to kind of help people follow the story because it can be a little complicated. That's one knock on ARGs, is that they can overwhelm people. So not everybody is an intense puzzle solver who wants to dig so deep. So Susanna essentially recaps player activity and the story every week, and then helps people kind of stay up to date.
Over the last few weeks, agents around the globe have been engaged in a fierce and protracted global chess match to control the Helios artifacts. At this point, 25 of the expected 40 artifacts have been observed around the world. Agents from both factions have collaborated to move the artifacts more than 300,000 kilometers through the portal network, at various times crossing both the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans and touching every continent except Antarctica. Agents have been working around the clock, coordinating across language barriers and thousands of miles in an attempt to control these powerful objects for their faction. We uncovered a surveillance video which appeared to show Roland Jarvis limping into an unknown facility. This week, the full video was released. Jarvis walks briskly back to his vehicle after workers are seen dragging what appear to be bodies into the same facility. More disturbingly, those same two workers are shown being executed afterwards by Hank Johnson's friend and associate as Marty. Analysis by the research group Essex claims that the video shows Jarvis being cured of his XM deficiency illness brought on by the Bogdanovich portal virus.
So there's an example of the blurring of the fiction, the reality. You mentioned the research group Essex there, but they're a real group of hardcore players, aren't they?
Yes, yeah. There's a total blur. The Essex players are our hardest core story followers. I mean, any one of them knows the story better than I do. And they put all the pieces together and theorize, because, as I said, our story's a puzzle every day. So, you know, we come out with, we give you an answer, but we cause more questions. And, and our assets are all designed to look like they came out of the real world. In other words, they're shot by video. You know, we experiment at times, and we have a fictional cover for this too. We experiment at times with doing regular scenes, but most of them come out of surveillance cameras and are data hacked out of information. And the Essex guys interpret it, and they're like the interpreters for the other players. And when the result is story dependent, the players turn to the Essex guys to tell them what's happening. You know, if like every once in a while, players will find out that the outcome of an event may not be what they think it was. Stuff like that.
For those of you who've made the shift from console to mobile, you know that it's typically a continuous development process. So you don't sort of ship and forget. You're always adding and shipping updates to the game. particularly with an MMO where you have to add content on a continuous basis. So really what Flint and the story team have done have brought story to that process where there's a daily creative meeting, there's a plan for the week, but it's very dynamic. I mean, the story may be influenced by some of the theories that players come up with. It may make its way into the fiction.
Well, if fictional characters will talk on live chats, with the characters, they'll show up and they're talking to fictional characters, can ask them questions. Of course, characters have to get off after about 5 minutes because they're inevitably being hunted by some secret agency or something. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of storytelling you can't do. It's just live, you're making it up. And
somewhere between like a TV show and traditional video game, and like running a D&D game.
It's just something nobody's ever done. I've done pretty much every kind of game there is to do, and nobody's ever done anything like this before. But because you're just doing it, and we have a very subjective world. So if a character tells you something is true, it's not like when I used to do D&D, modules where there was a truth. This is what this character thinks is true. Or this character may be lying to you. It's like following a real news story. That's the way to think of Ingress, is you're following a news story or a sports season or something.
So you've got the unreliable narrator aspects of it.
Yeah, there are a lot of unreliable characters. Matter of fact, every character has an agenda, so that's what the players love to figure out is, what's this guy doing?
Indeed. So you've got social and video in there, very kind of flexible, reactive media that you can utilize to reflect the storyline. So why did you decide to also kind of work with more traditional medium like novels and comic books?
Well, not everybody in the world likes to read a little fragmentary part of a story and assemble it. New players come in and all that. So we do sort of encapsulate the stories there. The first novel we did was Alignment Ingress, and Tom Grinius is a real live thriller writer. And so we mixed with his characters. So all of a sudden our world became a shared world with his character's world, but it was telling the story what happens with the Niantic project. Niantic Project Ingress was allegedly written by Felicia Hajrali, who he basically wrote this book 5 years ago and is really pissed off because the events in her book are coming real, and so she feels her book's losing value. And she's kind of a psychic novelist, so she wrote that one. Same thing with Level 8, and then we have comic books. And just like what happens with movies and all that, comics are a medium that appeal to a lot of people. They give you a visual representation of what happened. And our comic artist is a guy named Tycho. And I first met Tycho when he accosted me at Comic-Con at a panel I was doing. And he's been one of these ghost guys that's existed, and nobody's ever really seen his face. Nobody knows his name. They just call him Tycho. And he turned up one year at Comic-Con and started accusing me of putting portals in comic books. It was weird.
I mean, what you're seeing are solutions to problems that we encountered. So this wasn't part of the plan originally to do novels and comic books. So we kind of talked about it, but we found that with this ARG style of storytelling and this continuous evolution of the story, that people needed an on-ramp. People needed a way to recap. People needed an equivalent to find a TV show that you love, you go to the video store and rent, or go to Amazon or whatever and get last season's episodes and you sort of catch up. So with this type of story, folks, that was a requirement. So the books and the comic books are that way to catch up and get into the story, which is very dynamic and it's coming out every day.
Kind of like what a news weekly used to be for for catching up on the week's news.
Absolutely. So what are these? Are these new novels? These huge tomes that you brought in with you?
No, these are, if you're really hardcore, those are all of our assets. Okay, this is thousands of drops. Yeah, well, hundreds anyway. Of different story drops and all that.
That's right. Yeah,
this is the source material. Okay, and then the novels and all that stuff are the people's interpretations of the source material.
So we put these out on ebooks yesterday, so they're actually available for sale to the player base. And yeah, people wanted, even though this content sort of came out on social media over the course of a year and a half, people wanted it kind of compiled into a form that was easily researchable and browsable. So, if the books are the onboarding, if the books and comic books are the onboarding for kind of the casual or the new, this is the, research.
Yeah, this is the Bible. This is the books are the sermon, and that's the Bible.
Good stuff. Well, we're pretty much out of time, so I guess the last thing to ask is, clearly you're evolving the narrative and kind of reacting to the way that the audience is reacting to it. So what's next from a game standpoint?
Yeah, there's a new feature we're launching tomorrow, which is really grew directly out of this fan feedback and kind of fan fiction. which is called missions. So it adds this kind of structured gameplay to Ingress, similar to kind of the mission or quest that you might go on in a traditional RPG. But because Ingress takes place in the real world, we couldn't really author, a collection of quests for every city or town in the whole planet. That was, beyond our capability. So what we built is a mission authoring tool, Mission Maker, so you can go in and make a quest for your town. You can draw on historical data, all the portals, all the information from Field Trip, which is another app that we make. And yeah, we think it's going to be really well received by those fans that are really into the story and co-creating the story with us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, our fans are our partners, and so now we've given them a tool to, you can come, come in and do your thing, and like every other unreliable, narrator, that may or may not be true,
But those will be discoverable by all players. So yeah, it's a kind of, I think, cool way to leverage the enthusiasm of the hardcore and kind of get that back into something that makes the game better for everybody.
Yeah, you're living a story in the real world. So like you get to the next portal and you get a new piece of information.
Great. Well, we've run over time. So John, Flint, thank you very, very much for your time. Finally, just like to draw attention to the fact that there's actually an event happening today, isn't there? Just around the corner. I think within your bags there's this, and that's basically an Ingress event that's happening in Kensington Palace Green. Apparently, what, 350 people? I
think we're north of 350, so front row seat to Ingress if you want to check it out and talk to some real players and kind of see what this is all about. It's a cool opportunity.
See what it's like out in the field, but that's it. Thank you very much for your time.